Happy Halloween, curious souls. Tonight, we're leaving the safety of the shore and drifting to the darkest corners of the ocean. Out here in the vast, relentless seas, strange things happen. Ships go silent, lighthouses stand guard over empty islands, and scared voices seem to echo out of nowhere, carried by the waves and then gone. Buckle your life vests and settle in while I tell you some tales. Listen closely and remember, when you venture out here, the ocean doesn't always let you return. Welcome to Wild Curiosity. It was December 4th, 1872, a cold day on the Atlantic, when the British brig De Gratia spotted a ship drifting aimlessly in the distance. As they approached, her sails hung torn and slack, catching just enough wind to keep her moving. It wasn't long before the De Gratia's crew recognized her, the Mary Celeste. But there was something terribly wrong. The Celeste was moving, but she was empty. There were no figures on the deck, no sounds, no signs of life. Cautiously, a small party from the De Gratia boarded her, only to find her utterly abandoned. Yet everything else was in place. Inside, they found the captain's quarters undisturbed, Captain Briggs's belongings neatly in place, and his bed carefully made. The galley was stocked with food, and the crew's personal items were left behind as if they planned to return. In the dining area, a sewing machine and a child's sewing project lay as though someone had just been there, mending clothes. But most chilling of all, the Mary Celeste's last log entry was dated November 25th, marking their position off the Azores. That was 9 days before she was found, and in that time, the ship had drifted nearly 400 miles without a soul on board. Captain Benjamin Briggs was a respected sailor, 37 years old, known for his skill and steady hand. He embarked on the journey from New York to Genoa, Italy, with his wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia. Along with them were 7 seasoned crew members, handpicked by Briggs for their loyalty and reliability. This wasn't a reckless bunch. They were experienced sailors, trusted to cross the Atlantic even in the winter's harsh weather. So what happened to them? Why would an entire crew leave a perfectly seaworthy ship in the open ocean? Some say it was piracy, that they were attacked, taken, or worse. Yet nothing was disturbed or stolen. Their cargo of industrial alcohol remained untouched, even though it would have been valuable to any looters. Then there's the theory of mutiny. Some suggest that perhaps a crew member turned violent, forcing the others to abandon ship in panic. But again, there was no sign of struggle, no blood, nothing to suggest violence. Other theories venture into the bizarre. One involves the cargo itself, 1,700 barrels of denatured alcohol. Some speculate that fumes from a leak could have created a toxic environment, causing the crew to panic and abandon ship, only to be lost at sea. However, no evidence of an explosion or significant leak was ever found. And then there are some supernatural theories. Whispers of a cursed ship, bound to roam the seas for eternity. Stories of ghostly figures spotted on deck of the Mary Celeste, drifting silently through the mist. Despite years of investigations, the mystery remains unsolved. The Mary Celeste was recovered, restored, and even sailed for a few years afterward. But her legend grew. To this day, she's remembered as the ship that drifted across the Atlantic with no one on board. That one's pretty spooky, and so is this next one. In February of 1948, a frantic distress call crackled over the radio waves, coming from somewhere off of the coast of Indonesia. The voice was panicked, fragmented. All officers, including the captain, are dead, lying in chart room and bridge, possibly whole crew dead. Then there was silence and one final message. I die. The message came from a Dutch freighter called the SS Ourang Medan. Alarmed by the chilling broadcast, American and Dutch vessels picked up the signal and set out to find her. Days later, the Ourang Medan was spotted drifting in the Strait of Malacca, her hull swaying quietly against the waves. She seemed deserted, like an enormous steel ghost ship. When rescue crews boarded, what they found was straight out of a nightmare. The deck was littered with bodies. The crew lay dead, sprawled across the bridge, the deck, and down in the engine room. But it wasn't the death toll alone that haunted those who boarded. Each sailor's face was frozen in terror, eyes wide, mouths twisted open as if caught in a silent scream. Even the ship's dog was found lifeless, its teeth bared in an expression of fear. The rescuers couldn't understand what could have caused such a scene. There were no signs of struggle, no injuries, no blood. It was as if every person on board had been terrified to death. And then, just as mysteriously as the Ourang Medan had appeared, things took an even darker turn. As the crew investigated, a fire broke out in the ship's hull, sending everyone scrambling to safety. Within minutes, the Ourang Medan was consumed in flames, sinking quickly into the depths, taking her dead with her. Any answers or clues vanished beneath the waves. So what happened? Theories range from the sinister to the bizarre. Some speculate that the Ourang Medan was carrying a secret cargo, possibly lethal chemicals or even weapons used in warfare. A leak could have released toxic gases, leading to mass asphyxiation and strange reactions in the crew. But even so, why the looks of terror? What could have made a sailor hardened by years of the sea die in such horror? Others whisper of paranormal causes, a cursed vessel, ghostly apparitions, or something else entirely. Some versions of the story even suggest the crew encountered something supernatural out there in the dark waters, something that left them paralyzed with fear, unable to escape its grasp. Whatever the cause, the Ourang Medan sank that day, taking its mysteries with it, and though she's gone, her story lives on, a grim reminder that some things in the ocean's depths might be better left unseen. Sometimes the sea doesn't take the lives of those who brave her waters. Sometimes she claims those who simply watch over them. Our next story comes from the Flannan Isles. Rocky, windswept, and desolate, the Flannan Isles sit off the rugged western coast of Scotland. On the largest of these islands stands a lighthouse, built in 1899 to guide passing ships safely through the treacherous North Atlantic waters. It was a lonely post, manned by 3 keepers: James Ducat, a father of 4 and the principal keeper, Thomas Marshall, the assistant keeper, and Donald MacArthur, an occasional keeper filling in for his colleague. So in December of 1900, just a year after the lighthouse began its operation, something went terribly wrong. On December 15th, a passing ship noted that the light wasn't visible from Eilean Moor. Normally, a lighthouse dark at night was cause for immediate alarm, but the seas were rough, and it would be days before anyone could investigate. Finally, on December 26th, a relief vessel, the Hesperus, arrived at the island to bring supplies and switch shifts with the keepers. When they arrived, though, the island was eerily silent. Joseph Moore, the relief keeper, was the first to step foot on shore. He found the gate to the compound ajar and the front door to the lighthouse unlocked. Inside, he noticed the clock had stopped, beds were unmade, and a meal sat uneaten at the table, as if someone had just been interrupted mid-bite. He continued his search, but there was no sign of any of the keepers. An official investigation was launched, piecing together clues and reading through the log entries left by the men. Thomas Marshall's entries from December 12th spoke of a severe storm that battered the island, though no reports of storms were logged in the surrounding areas. He also mentioned that James Ducat had become quote-unquote very quiet, and that Donald MacArthur, known as a tough, no-nonsense man, had been reduced to tears. The final entry on December 15th simply read, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." And then, silence. Theories sprang up almost as soon as the investigation concluded. The most plausible explanation was that one of the men had ventured outside to secure equipment during the storm and the others had followed to help, only to be swept away by a massive rogue wave. This theory matched the evidence of coats missing from the hooks and oilskins, protective outerwear, left in disarray. Yet some found it hard to believe that 3 experienced keepers would take such a risk, especially in the middle of such a violent storm. And then there are stories that drift into the realm of folklore. The Flannan Isles have long been surrounded by eerie legends. Local fishermen refused to land there, calling it a haunted isle. They spoke of strange lights in the sky and whispers on the wind, stories that seemed as old as the stones themselves. To this day, no one knows for sure what happened to the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers. Their bodies were never found, and the lighthouse has continued its vigil over the rocky shores, standing as a silent witness to whatever it was that happened on that winter night in 1900. Next, we find ourselves at the top of the world. But the Arctic is no gentle frontier, and what was meant to be a groundbreaking journey quickly became a brutal struggle for survival. Sir John Franklin set out from England in 1845 with 2 ships, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror, and a crew of 129 men. Their goal was to forge a path through the Arctic's Northwest Passage, a treacherous route of ice, bitter cold, and darkness. Equipped with the latest technology of the time, the expedition was expected to return within 3 years. But as the years passed, nothing. The Franklin expedition was supposed to be one of triumph, a feat of courage and exploration. Sir John Franklin and his crew were prepared to brave the Arctic to map a way through what was known as the Northwest Passage, a coveted dangerous route shrouded in ice, where few had dared to go. But instead of fame, Franklin and his men faced a nightmare as relentless as the icy waters around them. By 1848, Franklin's crew had been missing for 3 years, and the British Admiralty finally sent search parties to find them. Yet as each year passed, all that emerged were faint, eerie clues, scattered pieces of a tragedy that was still unfolding. When our explorers finally arrived in the Arctic, they found abandoned camps and haunting relics, journals left half-written, tarnished silver cutlery engraved with initials, and empty cans that once held their meager rations. But the worst was yet to come. One search party uncovered a message buried under a stone cairn on King William Island. The note held the first real clue to what happened. Written in neat handwriting, it stated that Franklin had died, along with 23 crew members. The date was April 1848, and in a final line scrawled hastily around the margin, it mentioned that the remaining 105 men had abandoned the Erebus and Terror and were attempting to walk south in search of salvation. They were hundreds of miles from any help, with only the frozen, desolate Arctic stretching endlessly around them. The years that followed brought even more disturbing finds. In isolated locations scattered across the island, human remains began to surface. Bones, cracked and weathered, often lying in strange clusters as if the men had dropped in their final moments. Some skeletons lay fully clothed, preserved by the ice, with belongings still clutched in their hands. It was a silent testament to the suffering these men endured. The slow collapse of hope as frostbite, starvation, and exposure set in. And then there were the marks on the bones. Some bore signs of cuts, the kind made by desperate hands, evidence of cannibalism. It became horrifyingly clear that in the face of starvation, Franklin's men had turned to the unthinkable, attempting to survive by any means possible, even as the Arctic became their tomb. Imagine it, dozens of men walking in a single file line, weakened, frostbitten, and hallucinating under the bright Arctic sun. With the cold air searing their lungs, the journals and the few scattered messages left behind reveal how the men likely suffered from lead poisoning, leached from the tin cans holding their food. They were poisoned from within, their minds deteriorating as they struggled to survive in the freezing void. For over a century, the Arctic kept these secrets close, preserving what it had claimed, It wasn't until 2014 that modern expeditions, aided by advanced sonar and submersibles, located the wreck of the Erebus, astonishingly well preserved beneath the icy waters. 2 years later, the Terror was also discovered, lying in pristine condition as though still waiting for its crew to return. These discoveries were like echoes of the past, a ship trapped in the ice, still as the day it was left, holding its secrets and the last frozen hours of men who sailed it. This ghostly expedition lives on today, and for those who venture into the Arctic, it serves as a reminder. Nature remembers, and sometimes it doesn't let go. All right, I've got one more for you, because I can't end a Halloween episode without talking about a real ghost ship. One that is pretty well known, called the Flying Dutchman. The Flying Dutchman, a name whispered with dread by sailors throughout the centuries. This legendary ghost ship is said to sail the seas eternally, never able to make port and doomed to wander the oceans forever. The legend dates back to the 17th century, the Dutch Golden Age, when a captain named Hendrik van der Decken set sail from Amsterdam on a treacherous journey to the East Indies. His ship was known for its speed and power, and van der Decken was proud, determined to make his name with a swift and profitable voyage. As the story goes, Van der Decken's ship was caught in a brutal storm while rounding the Cape of Good Hope. The waves rose high, the wind screamed, and the crew members begged him to turn back. But Van der Decken was a stubborn man, and some say he was cursed with a dark arrogance. With thunder roaring above him, he is said to have declared that he would complete his journey, even if it meant sailing until Judgment Day. As soon as the words left his mouth, the ship was enveloped in darkness, and the storm grew fiercer. It was then, they say, that Van der Decken and his crew were condemned, doomed to wander the oceans for all eternity, never reaching their destination, never making port. Over the centuries, there have been dozens of sightings, reported by captains, sailors, even naval officers. In 1881, the British Royal Navy ship, Bachante, reported a sighting of the Flying Dutchman. The lookout saw a strange ship glowing with an eerie red light, its sails full, cutting through the mist. But when the crew tried to get a closer look, it vanished. Some believe the Flying Dutchman is nothing more than a legend, a tale crafted to keep sailors in line and remind them of the ocean's power. But others swear they've seen it. Its ghostly figure, a reminder that the sea remembers every oath, every challenge made in arrogance. I think today we've seen how the ocean holds its secrets. Ghost ships adrift in the mist, vanished crews, and journeys that end only in mystery. From the Mary Celeste, drifting alone, the doomed distress of the Ourang Medan, to the haunting absence of the lighthouse keepers, and finally to the frozen ghosts of the Franklin expedition. And don't forget the real ghosts from the Flying Dutchman. So maybe next time you find yourself by the water's edge, with fog rolling in and a chill in the air, you'll remember these tales. Maybe it's better not to ask what waits out there in the dark and the deep, because sometimes these mysteries remind us that the ocean doesn't always let go. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please subscribe to Wild Curiosity wherever you listen to podcasts, leave a rating or review, and share with a friend who likes mysteries. I'd love to hear from you. Tell me which tale was your favorite tonight and what you think happened in any of these places. I'd also love to hear your own maritime mysteries or theories. Email me at wildcuriositypodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram, Wild Curiosity Podcast. Well, everyone, I hope you have a fun Halloween. Stay safe out there. And as always, my friends, remember, to stay curious and explore the wild. All right, love you. Bye.